Today I'm going to do the maintenance on the Bel Air, change the oil and grease up the chassis and whatnot. And I've never really shown this thing just sitting here running, have I? Like this, almost 200,000 miles. It's been running quite a while, just sitting there at idle. So it's running about 160 degrees right now. Guess you can see the temperature gauge. This car originally had resonators on it and they kept rusting out. So I eliminated them. They were right here. You can see where they at. I don't know if that shows up in the light, but there's a straight piece of pipe there where it used to. I used to have resonators on the 348s. You had the big mufflers. And the size of that muffler, it's huge. And then the pipe goes, you know, it's an X-frame and it goes down that. And then there's oval resonators there. Like I say, I could get maybe 2 years out of them. They'd rot out, so I just had them eliminated. So it's a little noisier at idle. You know, a little lower, like you can hear a little lower rumble that you normally wouldn't hear. The oil filter on this is not in a handy place. And these normally were canisters. I took the canister off and converted it to a spin-on. And let's see, I'll put the wrench over the other way, and it just makes life a lot easier, but it's still a nightmare. I take the oil filter off first, and then I start the draining the sump. Whoops, and that way the pickup tube drains to that exhaust pipe is hot. My oil filter wrench is getting tired here too. It's probably pretty old filter wrench. Let that drip out a little bit, and then I'll unscrew it and drop it in the drain pan. Then I'll take the plug out of the sump. One thing nice about this car is all the grease fittings are in the front, so it's easy to grease the chassis. The Galaxy, they're all behind the cross member and stuff. So they're really hard to get at. You have to jack the Galaxy up to grease the chassis. This I don't, but I just don't want to get oil everywhere. I've got a piece of cardboard under here, but yeah, it's just a messy job changing oil. I need to jack the car up, but it's just there we go. And that's why I keep cardboard under the cars right there, you know, for when I do stuff like this. All right, I'm going to let that drain out and go in and have lunch, and then I'll come back out and lube up the chassis. There's lots of fittings on this car. All right, I'm going to put a new filter on it, and I don't put oil in the filter on this car before I put it on, because it's just kind of a nightmare to get up in here over the exhaust and just wipe up the oil that dripped from when I took the filter off. And I'll just get the filter up in here. Yeah, this is a lot easier than changing the original canister. The escape's in at the Ford dealer, that's why it's not here. It's in for service. The alternator went bad, and I want that car solid reliable, so I wasn't going to put some crappy reman alternator on it. And the alternator looked like a nightmare to change. So I just took it to the Ford dealer, and they're going to take care of it, and it'll have a brand new alternator instead of a reman one. Yeah, it'll cost more, but at the end of the day, the reliability will be there, and That's what's important to me. All right, let me put the drain plug back in. The neighbor's making one of those, you can probably hear him over there working, making one of those big, like, vans into a motorhome. He's actually doing a pretty nice job of it, too. He bought it brand new. It's a Ford, like a big Ford, I don't know what it is, what they call them, but it's a big vehicle. And then I just wipe up the sump a little bit, just to, you know, because oil splashed off of it and stuff. The cross member, just kind of wipe things up as I do things, you know, it just keeps things clean. The sump does, it needs a new sump gasket. It leaks on the rubber seals on each end of the pan. There's a GM has a rubber seal right in between the sump and the timing cover and the sump and the main bearing cap, and it leaks both ends out of that rubber seal. It's all original, it's never been apart. And one of these years, you know, we'll go through it, and now you can see the spool valve and the power steering, slave cylinder and stuff. We'll give all that a quick clean up. On this car, the oil fill is this breather cap. It's got a road draft tube, so the tube underneath the car when you're going down the road creates a vacuum in the crankcase, and it intakes through this, and that's, you clean it and oil it so it traps the dirt, and that's actually pretty clean. But you can see down in here how clean this engine is on the inside. It's been very well maintained, and so, you know, I mean, I think that I've changed oil in it every couple thousand miles or once a year, whichever comes first, and typically, especially this year, it's once a year. I'll have to look to see how many miles are on the oil change, but I doubt it's much more than 1,000. Stuff's like maple syrup. And I'll just let this sit here and drip out for a minute. I'll let that sit there and drip for a minute too. Just so you can kind of see what the drain oil looks like after it was in the car. Really not that bad. Carbureted cars, oil gets nasty quicker because of the choke, you know, and the excessive fuel blow by on the rings. But that, you can see it's not really, I mean, this is out of my drain pan. It's not really that bad. I'll try and do this with the camera. There's grease fitting on the power steering spool valve, and you put no more than one pump in this fitting. I'm using a pneumatic grease gun, obviously. And then I just pump this until I see a little bit of grease coming out of the boot, which is right there. And then I'm going to wipe the excess up just so it doesn't make a mess. I need to pressure wash the underneath here, but do that in the spring. don't want to do it in the winter before I store the car away. You know, just the oil and grease will help prevent it from, keep it from anything from corroding. That's enough. You can see the grease where it comes out right there, I think. And then there's a fitting up there on the upper control arm, on the inner tie rods. So I'm not gonna video. I gotta replace a sway control bushing. I'll do that in the spring too. So I'll put new sway bar bushings in, and I'll clean everything up, pressure wash all this underneath here. It's definitely in need of it. Need of a good cleaning. So you don't pump dirt in the grease fittings. I always just wipe my fittings off. I already did that. I only got these 3 on this wheel left to do. And then there's one for the clutch bell crank that's a nightmare to get at. It's up by the oil filter where the exhaust is. So yeah, that's why I didn't start the engine yet, to get the oil pressure out, because the exhaust gets hot and then I can't grease that fitting. See how the boot, I don't know if they just showed up or not, but the boot just, puffed up a little bit. I don't know if that shows up or not, but that's plenty of grease in that fitting. And then the one last fitting is the upper control arm. There's the grease gun I'm using, just a cheap pneumatic one. I think it came from Tractor Supply. I don't know if that shows up there or not, but that shaft has a grease fitting on it, and that's what I gotta grease. It's kind of a nightmare to get at, because, you know, the exhaust and the oil filter and the frame, and it's just in a tight spot. They should have put the fitting facing up, because then you could easily reach it. Well, maybe not. I don't know. If it had a small block, yeah, you could probably reach it from the top, but with the 348, no, I don't think you could. But anyway, let me get some grease in that. This thing has oilers on the generator, so you gotta just fill them up. They don't take much to fill things up. That was full, and then there's one on the distributor. There's the other one I just oiled. So let me get the one on the distributor. Can you see it back in there? Yeah, it's a little hard to get at. You got to get the air filter off. And this thing's kind of, the angle of it makes it hard to open that oiler. There we go. Doesn't take much. This has the Pertronics in it too. I put them in everything I own, you know, that had points that you can get them for. There's the Rochester Ford Jet. It could use a little cleaning too. I haven't really done anything to this car in a couple of years. I haven't really had it here that much until just this past, since I sold the house in Romeo, where I kept it. Yeah. So I'll hit that in the spring too. What I do when I put this over in storage, I'll let the engine cool down. Maybe the next day I'll go over there, I'll pop the air cleaner off. I'll spray the carburetor and everything with WD-40 real lightly, like a mist. And the exhaust manifolds I'll spray. You know, anything that's bare aluminum or bare iron. And that way, when you get condensation in Michigan, you know, it could be 10 degrees one day and 50 the next day in Michigan. And what happens is, like that cold glass ice water on a hot summer day. So the car's sitting in storage, and let's say you had a couple weeks of sub-zero weather, and then you get a warm day. Everything gets wet from condensation. Now this will be inside, so the temperature swings won't be as bad inside storage, but you know, it's not climate controlled, so to prevent corrosion on things like that, I will spray everything with WD-40 once it's cooled down, like the bare stuff. just keeps it a lot nicer. Well, like I said yesterday, I checked all these fluids. That's good. I don't bother using the stick. If you put this thing up to the full mark, it just runs out all over the can, even if you do it when it's hot. So I just let it set its own level and don't worry about it. And brake fluid, that looks like it could be drained out and refilled. I might do that. Yeah, it definitely needs, I got the fluid out, but it definitely needs, I'll fill it up with clean fluid for now, but in the spring what I'll do is I'll just keep that full. I'll put a hose on each wheel cylinder into a container and loosen them up and just let the system gravity exchange the fluid until all the fluid's clean. That's what came out. So it's all topped up with brand new fluid in there. You see all the way to the bottom of the cylinder now with the fluid in there. It looks really good, so I'll call that good. I don't know if this is going to show up or not, but there's a little wick on that bell crank right there, and I find if I keep it oiled, the clutch is freer. And put a couple drops of oil on that. That's for the clutch too. That makes things work a heck of a lot better. I had 1,075 miles on the oil change. I changed it last August 30th of 19. So it's been a little over a year. And I didn't prime the oil filter or fill the oil filter because it just dumps everywhere. It's just a nightmare to, you know, put it in with oil in the filter. So I just start the engine without touching the accelerator and let it idle until the oil pressure comes up. And then I'll give it a little gas and check it for leaks. It's still got a little temperature in the engine. It's been sitting here probably 2 hours since I had it out. There we go. Pretty much all set. Like I say, I'll spray it down with a little WD-40. And I'll put that in a little video what I do, you know, when I put it away, which will probably be in a few days when I take it over there. I want to clean up in the engine compartment and, you know, just wipe everything down, just kind of tidy it up just a little bit. There's some stuff on the hood here from bugs and from the belts and whatnot, so we'll clean that up and make it look a little nice before I run it over there. Did I ever show this? This is what they hung on the rear view mirror on power steering cars back in the day. So when this car would have been on the lot brand new, if it had the power steering option, they might have hung this on the steering wheel. So I'll just kind of turn it, and you can pause if you want to see what it says, you know, on it. So that's kind of the way you turn it. That's for on long trips. Oops. That's for when parking. And then again in city traffic. And I'll tell you what, these power steering in these old cars, even the Galaxy, you don't really get the feel of the road anyway. They're just like the wheel isn't attached to anything. The power steering is true power steering in these cars. Very little effort to turn the wheel. And they actually handle better with power steering too, because I think especially these ones, because that spool valve, you know, instead of fighting the wheel, hydraulic cylinder will help fight, so you don't have to fight the wheel so much. But yeah, it's just kind of a neat little doodad, isn't it? I don't know if that shows up there or not, but it's just to the end of the F on full. So it's just not a heck of a lot over with that extra little bit of that zinc stuff, and just doesn't really show up well, does it? But anyway, the one last thing I'm going to do before I put it up for the winter is I'm going to pump the tires up to about 35 psi. I usually run about 30 in them all summer, and then in the winter I'll pump them up a little bit because when it gets cold the pressure goes down in them. I also checked the diff and the gearbox too. See how it's just starting to run out, so that's good. Nice and clean still. I think after doing an oil change and all the maintenance, we'll go for a little ride. Well, let me get it out and we'll go for a short ride. One more thing I'll do before I run it over to the storage place is I'll fill it with gas. That way I don't get condensation in the fuel tank. If it was in a heated garage, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it, but it's unheated there, so we'll have a full tank of gas sitting there. I would say the car is all set for winter storage. This the jacking instruction sheet's way down in there on this car, but anyway, that cooler was my dad's, and he bought it in 1959. It's a Montgomery Ward Hawthorne cooler, and I just keep extra stuff in it. And you never know, like a bottle jack if I have a flat tire. And there's no electricity in the storage unit, so I'll pull a battery out and just throw it on my maintainer here. Normally I just leave the battery in it, and I took the maintainer out of the trunk and just set it there so I have it when I you know, when I put the car over there and cover it up. I'll pull a battery. I might not cover it up right away, you know, after I take it over there. I might, if we get a nice day between now and the beginning of November and want to take it out, I can, but I doubt I will. But I'll leave the battery in it and leave it uncovered. Once usually around the beginning of November, I'll pull a battery and cover it up. But it's basically ready to go, like I say, other than put air in the tires and fill it up with gas. So if you like the video, definitely hit the like button. It certainly helps. And if you like my channel, hit that 348 engine icon that pops up at the top of the screen there. And that will subscribe you. And thank you for watching my videos.